In a village forgotten by sun and prosperity, nestled in the shadow of the great mountains, lived a young girl named Ilara. Her world was small, defined by the four walls of their humble cottage and the fading warmth of her mother's hand. A strange sickness had crept into their lives, a gray pallor that stole the laughter from her mother's lips and the light from her eyes. The village healers had tried everything, their knowledge exhausted, their remedies powerless. Hope, it seemed, was as scarce as coin in their small, impoverished community. But whispers of a legend persisted, a story told in hushed tones around flickering fires. They spoke of the Sunstone, a gem said to hold the warmth of 1,000 dawns, with the power to cure any ailment. It was a faint glimmer in their encroaching darkness, a myth many had dismissed. The Sunstone was real, the elders confirmed, but it lay at the end of the Crystal Road, a path so treacherous that none who had attempted it in living memory had ever returned. For Ilara, hearing this wasn't a warning, it was a direction. Looking at her mother, who grew weaker with each passing day, Ilara knew she had no other choice. The myth was her only hope. With a small satchel packed with stale bread, a flask of water, and a heart full of desperate courage, she kissed her mother's brow, whispering a promise to return. As the first rays of dawn painted the sky, Ilara left the sleeping village behind and set foot towards the mountains, towards the legendary Crystal Road. The entrance to the road was unlike anything she had ever imagined. It wasn't a dirt path or a stone trail, but a dazzling spectacle that began abruptly at the edge of the forest. The ground, the walls of the narrow canyon, everything was forged from pure shimmering crystal. It was a breathtaking sight, a river of frozen light that snaked its way up into the towering peaks. Sunlight fractured into a million rainbows, dancing and shifting with every step she took. The beauty, however, was a sharp-edged lie. The crystals underfoot were as jagged as broken glass, threatening to slice through her worn leather boots. The air itself hummed with a strange energy, a melodic chime that seemed to seep into her thoughts. This was the road's first and most insidious trap, its illusions. As Ilara walked, the crystal walls began to play tricks on her mind. She saw visions of her mother, healthy and smiling, beckoning her down a side path that led to a sheer drop. She heard the laughter of her childhood friends, calling her name from alcoves that were nothing but dead ends. She saw feasts laid out on crystalline tables, smelling of roasted meats and fresh bread, only to reach out and touch solid, unyielding crystal. The road fed on a traveler's deepest desires and greatest fears, weaving them into mirages so convincing they could lead anyone astray. Ilara had to constantly remind herself of her purpose, focusing on the image of her sick mother, using the pain of her reality to fight the allure of the illusions. She was tired, her feet were bleeding, and her spirit was starting to fray. It was in a moment of near despair, as she slumped against a crystal outcrop, that she saw it. A flicker of movement, a flash of russet fur against the blinding white. Curled in a small hollow was a fox, but not any ordinary fox. Its fur was made of tiny, amber-colored crystals, and it whimpered softly. One of its hind legs was trapped between two large, jagged shards. Her first instinct was to hurry on. Time was a luxury she didn't have. Every moment she delayed was a moment her mother slipped further away. But as she looked into the creature's glistening, intelligent eyes, she saw the same fear and pain she felt in her own heart. She couldn't just leave it. Carefully, using a flat stone she'd picked up earlier, Ilara worked to pry the crystals apart. It was slow, painstaking work. The sharp edges tore at her fingers, but she didn't stop. Finally, with a soft crack, the shards gave way, and the crystal fox limped free. It shook its shimmering fur and looked up at Ilara, not with fear, but with an expression of profound gratitude. The small act of kindness changed everything. The crystal fox, instead of running off, began to walk a few paces ahead of her, glancing back as if to say, "Follow me." A new sense of hope bloomed in Ilara's chest. She followed the fox, and a strange thing happened. The world around her seemed to settle. The illusions, while still present, lost their power over her. When a vision of a lush green oasis appeared to their right, the fox would nudge her gently to the left, towards the true, albeit harsher path. When the disembodied voice of her father, long gone, called out from a chasm, the fox would let out a soft bark, grounding her in the present. It was as if the fox could see through the road's magic, discerning reality from deception. It led her through winding passages and over precarious crystal bridges she never would have found on her own. Her small companion seemed to know every secret of the treacherous road. Their journey grew steeper, the air thinner. They were nearing the summit. Standing between them and the final peak was the road's ultimate guardian. It was a golem, a colossal figure forged from the same jagged, clear crystal as the road itself. It stood twice as tall as a man, its form vaguely humanoid but featureless, its body refracting the light into a blinding glare. It was motionless, a silent sentinel, but Ilara could feel its immense power, a dormant threat waiting to be awakened. There was no way around it. The path was a narrow ledge, with the golem blocking it completely. Fear, cold and sharp, pierced through Ilara. This was it. After everything she had endured, she would fail here. As despair began to set in, the crystal fox tugged at the hem of her tunic. It led her to the base of the canyon wall, to a section that looked as solid and impenetrable as any other. The fox then began to paw at a specific formation of crystals, a cluster that formed a subtle spiral pattern. As its crystalline paws touched the sequence, a low grinding sound echoed through the canyon. A section of the wall slid away, revealing a dark, narrow opening just large enough for a person to squeeze through. It was a secret passage, hidden in plain sight. The fox looked back at her, its amber eyes seeming to urge her forward. With a grateful look at her guide, Ilara slipped into the tunnel, bypassing the silent, formidable guardian. The fox, its duty done, watched her go, a small shimmering beacon of hope on the perilous road. The passage was short, and Ilara emerged back onto the path just beyond the golem. The air here was different, calm, warm, and filled with a gentle golden light. She had reached the end of the road. Before her was a small circular clearing, and in its center, resting on a pedestal of pure white crystal, was the sunstone. It was more beautiful than any legend had described. It wasn't a large gem, no bigger than her fist, but it pulsed with an inner light, a soft golden glow that felt like the warmth of the summer sun on her skin. The entire clearing was bathed in its gentle radiance. Gone was the sharp, cold light of the crystal road, replaced by a feeling of life, peace, and immense power. Reaching out with trembling hands, Ilara lifted the sunstone from its pedestal. It was warm to the touch, and as she held it, she felt a wave of energy flow through her, healing the cuts on her hands and feet, chasing away the exhaustion from her bones. The journey back was a blur. Shielded by the stone's power, the illusions of the crystal road held no sway over her, and the jagged path seemed to soften under her feet. She ran, her heart soaring with a hope so bright it eclipsed the sun. She burst back into her village, a whirlwind of dust and relief, and rushed to her mother's bedside. The gray pallor had spread, and her mother's breath was shallow. Cradling the sunstone, Ilara gently placed it on her mother's chest. The effect was instantaneous. The stone's golden light enveloped her mother's form, sinking into her skin. Color returned to her cheeks, the frantic beat of her heart slowed to a steady rhythm, and with a deep, cleansing breath, her eyes fluttered open. They were clear, bright, and full of recognition. "Ilara," she whispered, her voice weak but steady. Tears of joy streamed down Ilara's face as she hugged her mother, the long nightmare finally over. The news spread through the village like wildfire. The sunstone not only cured Ilara's mother, but its residual energy seemed to revitalize the land itself. The crops, once withered, grew strong, and a sense of vitality returned to the people. Ilara, the girl who had braved the impossible, became a symbol of courage. She had not only saved her mother, she had brought a new dawn to her people, proving that even on the most perilous of roads, an act of kindness and a heart full of love can guide you through the darkness. Thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe for more tales of courage and wonder.